Hi! If you're like me and for one of your first fretting jobs you got one of these hammers and you weren't quite happy with it, join me and see how I upgraded this to a really nice fretting hammer. Hi, I'm Yoav and this is the Electric Luthier. Today I'm going to take this little hammer, which disappointed me last time I tried to do a fretting job with it. I actually ended up using this old carpenter's hammer and got better results. There are two issues that made this one better and one that actually makes this better. First is the weight. This little hammer just doesn't have enough oomph to really hammer those frets into place. On the other hand, this one, which does, has a very hard material, actually harder than the frets themselves, and may damage them while knocking them in. This one has plastic and rubber on both sides, which are both pretty good for the frets themselves, but are not good enough. And, as I said before, it lacks weight. Now, one of the more traditional materials for fret hammers is brass. And you can get some really nice crafted ones, like the ones Crimson Guitars make. Other ones use a combination of brass and plastics or hardened rubber. And these two usually start at about $30, like the ones StewMac makes. Some of them are Deadblow hammers, and they have something inside them that eliminates the bounce and concentrates the force. I'm going to be using a few very simple parts I picked up at the hardware store for just a few dollars. So let's get into it. First thing I did is took this one apart and checked out what kind of thread it has. And well, it happens to be 1/4 inch. So I went out and bought 1/4 inch screws, which fit perfectly in here. Now I need a few brass parts which will fit and will work together. These two are 1/2 inch by 10 millimeters and 15 millimeters. I'll see which one works better, and I'll cap these with these. So I want to keep the rubber part, and I'll take the plastic, this translucent one, off and replace it. And I'll start with the longer one because I think my thread works better with this one. I'll take the 1/4 inch screw, just put it in there, and for additional weight I'll fill this gap with washers until I flush with it. Eventually I might just put some glue in there, so just a little bit of epoxy to hold it in. You can have a few less washers and get the dead blow effect, which also limits or prevents entirely the bounce of the hammer when hitting the frets. I'll screw this one in place, try and keep it centered, tighten it a little bit, do the same for this one, slightly larger wrench for this one, just tighten it, that's nice. If you've noticed, most hammers are slightly rounded at the tip here and are definitely rounded here. So our next stop is going to be sanding. Don't forget to protect your eyes from these little slivers of brass. I'm starting with a 60 grit sandpaper, and it works nicely on the brass. I'm starting by rounding the edges and trying to eyeball it so it'll be as round as possible. I'll speed it up a little, but altogether it took me under 5 minutes. I don't need it to be totally round, just kind of round-ish. And then comes the tip itself. When I go manually, I'll start with 150 grit to remove the rougher 6-degree scratches of the sanding paper. Then I'll switch to about 400 to get it a bit smoother. If I was selling these, I'd continue to much higher grits and maybe even buff it at the end. But personally, I'm fine with the way it is. And if I'm happy with it, or if I want to add any more weight, I can do the other side as well. Took me all about, 10-15 minutes? Essentially what we have here is a nice little brass fret hammer that only cost us a few dollars more than the original one. It weighs a lot more, has a really nice smooth edge, and honestly I can't wait for the next time I have a neck to fret. So if you want more tips and information about building electric guitars, please subscribe and hit the bell button to get notified. And come visit me at theelectricluthier.com.